The best way I can summarize my thoughts on most of anything concerning Peter Parker is the same way Japan treats pacing, with sheer, utter contempt. Now, to clarify, I don't hate every version of Peter Parker. Most of the animated series that I've seen starring Peter Parker are actually pretty damn awesome. I really like him in Spectacular Spider-Man. I really like the JMS run, which is one of the only runs I've ever seen that actually has Peter Parker grow the fuck up and become a professor at a high school where he can help other kids like him who might be bullied, who might have problems at home, who might have their own issues. And that's a really damn cool direction JMS went with until Marvel completely screwed it all up. But barring those exceptions and like Andrew Garfield's version of the character, Peter Parker is just a dude I do not give a shit about. He's a dude that I mostly find annoying more often than not. And I understand why people like the Peter Parker incarnation of Spider-Man. He is kind of like the original, he's the one who's been around the longest, and he's had some pretty damn good storylines told about him. I'm not going to deny that. I would be stupid to just proclaim that Peter Parker has sucked from day one all the way up to now. That would just be completely, factually wrong of me to say. But most of the things that people find appealing about him are things that I do not care about. And Spider-Man has been such a hot mess. Well, Peter Parker has been such a hot mess for about 10 years now, from his movies to his animated series to especially his comic books. I just cannot understand how the fuck you can pay attention even remotely to anything Spider-Man related from the past 10 years, look at this movie, the second fucking reboot in less than a decade, and tell yourself, yeah, I'm pretty excited for the next reboot of Spider-Man. I don't get it. I really don't how the fuck you can be optimistic about this. Like, Batman is just as much forced and oversaturated as Spider-Man, but Batman is predominantly good. Like, yeah, Batman's hit a bit of a rough patch this year where some of his comic books have been sucking, and, some people didn't like BVS and Suicide Squad, and that's fair. Those are, like, legitimate grievances as well. But Batman, the fucker's been good for the past 30 years, more or less, and so even though he is oversaturated, like 90% of the time, most of his stuff is actually, at the very least, decent, but very usually pretty damn good. So, yeah, Spider-Man does not have the same excuse. Peter Parker Spider-Man has been predominantly bad. The versions of, like, the Spider-Man universe that are actually really pushing forward and are really good these days, they're guys like Miles Morales, Spider-Gwen, Silk, these offshoot brands or, like, characters of Spider-Man who, like, have the same basic power set, but they deal with different issues, different premises. And those are the guys who really are using the whole Spider-Man conceit really well, whereas the last time Peter Parker was interesting for me was when Dr. Octopus took over his body and basically acted as Spider-Man the same way a mad scientist supervillain would. That's the last time I liked Peter Parker, quote-unquote. And so, just even going into this trailer, I was already like, God damn, like, unless this trailer comes to life and sucks my balls, there's no way I'm going to say anything positive about it. But the movie has surprised me in some respects. Because when I saw the Guardians of the Galaxy 2 trailer, or Volume 2, or whatever you're going to call it, and I saw how visually interesting that movie was going to be, I thought that we were going to get a precedent for more visually interesting Marvel films. Because, and this is something that has to be said, Marvel films have, for the last, like, at least 5 or 6 years, looked like generic shit. 5 or 6 years ago is when they switched over to some kind of digital camera where you have to automatically, correct the colors and the way the scene is framed and how the saturation works. All those things have to be done in post-production. And Marvel has done a fantastically bad job of doing this with their films. Like, seriously, look at every movie from First Avenger to Civil War. Besides Guardians of the Galaxy, they all look like fucking bland TV movies. Like, the cinematography is not there. The visual aesthetic is so bland, so generic, so uninteresting. It's scary. Like, even if you love Civil War, which I don't, I think that's a bad movie, you have to admit to yourself, that movie looks like it was filmed in the back of a fucking garage or a parking lot. Everything in that movie looks so bland, so washed out, so generic. For fuck's sake, the airport fight, which, while it does have a lot of good moments of choreography and banter, looks really boring because it's a fucking airport. There's nothing interesting about an airport. It looks so bland and so generic. And of course, this isn't just a camera problem. It's also a problem with the way Civil War and Winter Soldier, a movie that I actually do like, are filmed. And the exceptions to this were Guardians of the Galaxy and Doctor Strange, kind of. But all of the other Marvel movies, even ones I like Winter Soldier, Iron Man 3, Age of Ultron, Ant-Man, they all look so fucking bland and TV. It's insane. And with Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I heard Marvel was going to be switching out to a new digital camera. That was going to be using a new camera that looks better, that's not going to make everything look so bland and washed out. And then I see the trailer for this, and I'm looking at it in stone-faced horror and thinking to myself, holy shit, Marvel has done it. They've made a Marvel movie that looks even more bland than the Russo brothers movies. And I didn't think you could pull that off. Like, seriously, throw fucking Civil War into pot player, up the saturation, then come back here, look me in the eye and tell me that something is not fundamentally broken with the visual aesthetic of this universe. So, the visuals, that's a pretty big knock against it. But the thing that I really want to bring up, and that's pretty much the only reason I'm even talking about this fucking movie at all, is the fact that they've pretty much stolen all of Miles Morales' stuff and they've given it over to Peter Parker. Now, a lot of people pre-release, myself included, were thinking, oh god, another Spider-Man movie, please god, at least make it Miles Morales, like rework his origin to exist without Peter Parker, or make Peter Parker like a superhero who was present beforehand, but then he died. Just please do something to shake things up, please. And then as more information was coming out that it was going to be Peter Parker yet again, it's going to be in fucking high school again, just whatever little grain of hope that there was for this movie was completely curb-stomped into the ground. But what's really baffling, and I really hope that people actually complain about this, is the fact that they've taken a lot of Miles Morales' stuff and they've handed it over to Peter Parker. The stuff with him being in like some kind of quasi-boarding school, that's from Peter Parker. His fucking sidekick is Genki. I don't care if they call him Ned Leeds or whatever. He looks, sounds, and pretty much acts the way a live-action Genki would. The scene where Genki finds out about how Miles is Spider-Man. It's the same fucking scene between Peter and this Ned Leeds guy. And don't tell me, oh, he's not Genki because his name is Ned Leeds. Like, yeah, and if Ben Affleck was called Bruce Bane in Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, would that have meant that he's not Batman, even though he has the physical characteristics of Batman and the personality ones of Batman, but just his name is a little tweaked? Like, no, fuck you, he's Genki. You motherfuckers are deluding yourselves into thinking that it's not Genki when it clearly is the dude. And I really hope a lot of people point this out. I really hope this isn't like the Valkyrie thing where the Marvel fan base is just going to selectively decide what they're going to bitch about and what they're not going to bitch about. Because, as we know, before Fantastic Four was coming out, everybody was bitching and moaning for years and years and years and years on end about Michael B. Jordan being Johnny Storm. And then when Valkyrie was cast and they got a black woman to play her and they're changing her race, I didn't see jack or shit about any of that. And I really hope that Marvel doesn't get away with this. I suspect that they might not get away with it because a lot of people still had, issues with Tilda Swinton. And I don't even care about race bending. I don't give a shit if Valkyrie's black or that Johnny Storm was black or any of this shit or that Zendaya might be playing MJ. I don't really care about race. I don't fucking care. I just would like at least some consistency in this stupid community instead of just selectively picking and choosing when they're going to stand for something and when they're not going to stand for something. But this isn't even like that. Like, this is really kind of egregious, I want to say, where they're just taking everything that Miles has done throughout his short existence and they've given it over to Peter Parker. And the defense of pro-Peter Parker people was that, oh, well, you can't make Miles Morales work. Like, the only way you could make Miles work on his own is if you just gave him Peter Parker's origin. And I don't agree with that, but now Marvel has essentially done that except for Peter. They've taken a lot of the basic concepts of where Peter Parker goes to school, what kind of people he hangs out with, how his best friend figures out his secret identity. They've taken all of that shit from Miles and they've given it to Peter. And I really hope somebody notices this and complains about it. What else? Oh yeah, Iron Man's in this fucking movie because Marvel loves the Avengers. And this is one of those things where I'm going to admit it makes 100% sense for Tony to be here. Oh yeah, and that's another thing they've stolen from Miles too. The thing that Miles was being played up for in his run in like the new one and the one in the Ultimate Marvel Universe was the fact that Miles had to prove himself to the older generation. He had to prove himself not only as Spider-Man, but he had to prove himself to the other adult heroes before they really gave him a chance. And that's another thing from Miles they've stolen and given it to Peter fucking Parker. So, yeah, I don't think I'm being insane when I'm making this accusation at Marvel Studios. But then, like, Tony tutoring Peter, that's not a bad idea, but I'm so fucking sick of the Avengers. I'm so sick of this team. I'm so sick of this fucking universe dictating how every piece of fiction in the West has to be done, and now it's even splitting over into Japan, where fucking Dragon Ball has like some kind of MCU-inspired writers' room or whatever. Like, fuck the Avengers. Do not want them in any more fucking movies. And then there's Michael Keaton as the Vulture. Who the fuck cares about the Vulture? Seriously, who? I do not know a single living life form that has existed, who will ever exist on this planet, that can look me in the eye and tell me that their favorite Spider-Man villain is the Vulture. Literally the only reason, the only thing that people have been able to bring up in defense of the Vulture is the fact that he's apparently Spider-Man's first big villain. And I'm like, yeah, and what the fuck has he done else that's noteworthy story-wise? Oh, what's that? Jack shit on the side of fuck all? Wow, well that's certainly a great choice for an antagonist. And a lot of people are then going to say, oh, well, Michael Keaton is playing the Vulture. That's probably going to be good. Like, yeah, Marvel constantly gets good actors for these villain roles, but a good actor can't do jack shit if you don't give him anything. I was reading the Doctor Strange Prelude comic about Caecilius' backstory, and that backstory instantly makes the movie better because it actually gives Caecilius' stupid bullshit about time being the enemy makes sense. But that's an Italian comic. Nothing in the actual film gives Caecilius, played by Mads Mikkelsen, a really good actor, any depth. Literally, this is something that Marvel always does, from Corey Stoll to Mads Mikkelsen to Mickey Rourke. Like, there are so many actors in this universe who have been chosen because they have talent, because they have real acting chops, and then the movies give them nothing to do. And I could count on one hand that's been torn up by a chainsaw the number of actors who've actually been cast in these movies and have been given something to do. And that's pretty much Robert Redford and James Spader and maybe Tom Hiddleston's Loki. That's it. Like, those are the only villains who've been actually given anything to fucking work with out of how many movies? Like 15, 16 by now? So, yeah, if you're going to use Michael Keaton's casting as a defense for why the Vulture is going to be cool, don't. Like, there are way, way too many examples of Marvel fucking up this kind of stuff than there are at them succeeding at it. So yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on the Homecoming trailer and the Spider-Man Homecoming movie. I don't see this movie working out. It has like 5 fucking villains again because, I don't know, because Spider-Man, ever since Spider-Man 3, they just feel the need to make every one of his movies have like 18 million villains because I don't know. Like I said, the movie looks visually very, very ugly. It looks like the most bland, trite shit I've ever seen in my life. It looks even blander than the Russo brothers movies, even the one Winter Soldier that I like. They've stolen Miles' stuff. That's pretty egregious if you ask me. And then there's, the casting of Michael Keaton, who, like, the Vulture does look kind of cool design-wise. I actually do like the Vulture design. But Michael Keaton's not going to get anything to work with here, guys. Like, he's not going to get anything to work with. And honestly, the only parts of this trailer that looked even kind of interesting to me were the parts in high school where it's just Peter, like, hanging out with his friends. But the second they start, introducing the stuff with the Avengers and the Vulture, I'm like, fuck this. Can we just not do this anymore? Can we just put this character Spider-Man in limbo for 10 years and then bring him back when somebody has an actual fucking take on the character, please? So yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on the Homecoming trailer. Not a fan of this movie, not a fan of a lot of the decisions. Tom Holland, he's pretty damn good in Civil War. He looks pretty damn cool here. He's, he makes the quips work and all that stuff in the way Tobey Maguire could never do in his wildest dreams. So that's good. And that's pretty much the only positive thing I can say about this. There's just not many things to